During its initial release in 1960, Michael Powell's Peeping Tom was met with strong backlash, many criticising its depiction of women, violence and nudity. The film had received such a negative reaction, Michael Powell never made another film in Britain. His career never recovered. What was it that upset critics so much at the time of the film's release? Peeping Tom focuses on Mark Lewis, a focus puller for a British film studio who earns money on the side photographing nude models. Mark's secret obsession is to film the facial reactions of women experiencing fear just before he murders them with a concealed blade within the leg of his camera's tripod. He collects the footage for a personal documentary project on fear. This experimental obsession relates to his childhood, where Mark's father, a psychologist, placed him in cruel experiments focusing on trauma. With each murder Mark commits, the investigation seems to draw closer to him, while Mark also documents the investigation with his own camera from a distance. One moment of the black and white home movie footage depicts Mark's father gifting him a camera. This gesture portrays a symbolic passing of the torch. Mark's father's experiments and fear are now to be Mark's responsibility. This gives the suggestion of reason as to why Mark is obsessed with filming fear on the faces of his victims. The film's use of on-screen violence, although sparse and restrained by today's standards, is shocking. Technically, very little murdering happens on screen. As Mark is about to stab his victims, the shot is cut, or the shot focuses on the victim's reaction to the murder rather than the murder itself. The building of tension, for example, during the scene where Mark watches and films Moira Shearer's Vivian dance on set at the studio after hours, as Mark prepares to ready his tripod, develops our expectations to such an intensity that to the final blow, the actual murder, strikes a powerful hit. We, as the audience, are aware that this is Mark's intention, but the anticipation of it at a time when it is typically unexpected during an improv dance routine creates discomfort. The cinematography is a mixture of colourful and voyeuristic, a style suitable for Peeping Tom. From the opening shots, when Mark follows a prostitute only to murder her, to the use of black and white home movie footage of Mark as a child taken by his father during intimate moments of fear and upset, such as a time as when Mark's mother died. The protagonist, Mark Lewis, is a character that, despite his terrible actions and his challenging demeanour of sexual repression and quiet anger, is a character we come to sympathise with. His suffering of childhood trauma makes it understandable why he has grown up into the troubled adult that he is. His gradual friendship with his tenant downstairs, Helen Stevens, grows, and as it does, Helen Stevens can see behind a troubled psyche. She encourages Mark to leave his prized camera at home as they go for a date, which allows us to see a perspective of Mark that we haven't seen before, even though Helen clearly saw that from the beginning. Mark is a troubled, deeply disturbed man, but his experiences with childhood trauma and his growing friendship with Helen makes him a surprisingly sympathetic one. The film ends in a personal conflict for Mark. He doesn't want to hurt Helen, but he feels obliged to. The police are on his tail as the investigators discover the string of murders that lead to him, and Mark realises that the only way to end his and everybody else's suffering is to commit suicide via his concealed tripod blade, the camera filming as he dies. At the time of its release, the film would have been considered disturbing for its violence, which would not have been as commonplace in 1960s cinema as it is nowadays. The references to sexuality would also have been viewed as too detailed for the time, sex being another subject not frequently handled in mainstream cinema. Despite its initial backlash, the film has become embraced as a classic of British and horror cinema by filmmakers such as Martin Scorsese for pushing the boundaries at the time of its release with the intelligent use of violence, cinematography, and a fascinating, challenging protagonist. Overall, the film proposes a question that's uncomfortable for the audience to consider. If Mark Lewis, as voyeuristic, perverse, and unfavourable as he is, commits these dreadful acts of violence, then what does that make the audience? An audience that is willing to view the perverse voyeurism and violence in an attempt to find entertainment. In conclusion, Peeping Tom was ahead of the curve and was, unfortunately, not quite appreciated at the time of its release. However, audiences have come to express an appreciation for the film, which has allowed new insights into what the film depicts, mental health, filmmaking, and trauma, and the questions it proposes regarding our relationships with violence and sex. Peeping Tom is an uncompromising, uncomfortable horror film that demands attention and a keen, watchful eye. Hello again, and thanks for watching. If you've seen Peeping Tom, what did you think of it? What do you feel similarly? Do you feel differently? And how so? What is it you liked or disliked about the film? And what kind of films would you want to see me cover next in the future? More horror films? More challenging, difficult films? Films that weren't appreciated in their time, maybe? Just drop a comment in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.